Okay, well, after Stonewall, first of all, the word had to get out that there was a Stonewall, and that got out through a newspaper that was started in Los Angeles called The Advocate. And that was basically the communications media for the entire gay and lesbian community in the entire United States. And then at the same time, out of that came the Gay Liberation Front here locally in San Diego. There was, and prior to that time, there were also some groups, the Daughters of Bilitis, and what was the name of another group? They're both headquartered in Los Angeles. Essentially, people met in homes. Metropolitan Community Church got formed through the help of Troy Perry was his name? Yeah, I think so, yeah. Anyway, it was Howard Williams that got that together. So meetings would take place also in what would be called the parish hall of MCC. And at that time, MCC rented space from the it was Methodist Church on Hill Street. That's all I remember. Or maybe it was no, it was Methodist Church on Hill Street. And so meetings would take place there. There really was no place for meetings in terms of community forming and the like, except MCC. And then when Jess was able to get the center developed, and then we got our own property, then meetings took place there also. Well, I remember the GLF. They were the closest thing we had to an activist group. As those that were in the GLF, I wasn't, but I worked with them. They used to call themselves the Angry Five. I would say at their strongest they might have had 15 people, but they worked at essentially getting the word out that there's more people than just one out there. They also worked at getting the word out that they're not going to take it anymore. And then at the same time, they would issue edicts and demands in the name of the San Diego's Gay Liberation Front, which drove the city crazy because they thought that there was going to be 2,000 to 3,000 wild, crazy queens demonstrating against them, and that was where their influence came, and that was the, as I call it was smoke and mirrors done very effectively. As a matter of fact, I think I've talked with several people, and I think during the entire time of the real active period of the gay rights movement, there were probably never more than 20 people that were really the activists. There was a lot of people that were hangers-on, but when the action was required, you could only count about 20 people, and that was after the Gay Liberation Front. The 1974 march was organized by the center, and I was on the board of directors at the center at the time, and I remember I was rather nervous about it because we were a 501c3 corporation, and at the time I think we were still a satellite agency of Episcopal Community Services. And this march was engaging in political activity, which, well, at least in those days, just asking for gay rights was a political act. I guess it was. But my concerns were that we might be violating the 501c3 of the center and also Episcopal Community Services. But I kind of kept that to myself anyway, because I said, by the time they find out what happens, it'll all be over with anyway. So the organizing took place at the center. In fact, they even had sign painting sessions there at the center, out on the sidewalk in front of the center. And there was no permit. The reason being that we knew that we wouldn't get one anyway. And it was just decided that we would march on the streets, because you didn't need a permit to march on the streets. We made sure we were not, excuse me, on the sidewalks, not the streets. But we had to march on the sidewalks and not block the sidewalks. And then the march went up C Street, as I remember, and then turned up and went up towards the park. We had no rally because it was basically an ad hoc type thing, or it was a thing. In terms of surviving, you had to kind of hit and run. So after it was over, everyone kind of went back to the center and talked about, hey, how great this was and stuff like that. And like I said, I think there was about 25 people that did that march, and a number of them wore bags over their heads. One in particular was Gary Reese. Why? He was a lieutenant in the Navy on active duty at that time. And there were a number of people like that, but he marched in that parade also. In fact, he and Jess were roommates at that time. So that was the first time that I'm aware of kind of the community as a group, all 25 of them, it did something. It also reminded me of one time, in fact, Nicole made the comment one time about activism in San Diego, and he had a point, and that is, you have these people that go up there, go get them, and she says, and there you are charging up the hill, looking back for your support, and there they are down at the bottom hill going, go girl, go. And that's, so you had the activist people that stuck the necks out, and everybody else was just kind of hanging on. The Anita Bryant thing, that was, that helped to mobilize the community. And then the John Briggs thing, that was Proposition 6, wasn't that? Yeah. Now that really galvanized the community. Got them working together. And that was headed up by Ellen Miller here in town that was doing that. She's now dead. But she ran that thing all the way through to the very end. And most of us were even surprised when we won. It was like, huh? They supported us, the majority of the voters. But they were good. At the same time, all of those things had one thing in common, and that was the gay and lesbian community, like almost all minority communities that I'm aware of, work best when they have a common enemy. And they made themselves the common enemy. It's like the police department helped us to grow because they were a common enemy.